Everyone thinks I'm brave for chasing my dream at 30, but most mornings I sit in my car outside a warehouse full of handmade candles pretending I'm not terrified that I ruined my life. That thought usually comes right before I open my banking app, right before I see numbers so low they make my chest tighten, right before I remember that 3 years ago I wore pressed shirts, answered marketing emails in glass office buildings, and believed my life was only temporarily delayed. Now I smell like melted wax and burnt coffee half the week. I graduated in 2020. Worst timing imaginable. People say that all the time with a little laugh, but it stopped being funny for me a long time ago. I got my marketing degree, collected internships that paid mostly in experience, and kept telling myself something stable would happen eventually. It never really did. I worked at a restaurant for 2 years after graduation, double shifts, aching feet, fake smiling at customers who snapped their fingers at me like I was a dog. I used to come home smelling like fryer oil and sit on the edge of my bed too tired to even shower. Still, I thought it was temporary. That word carried me for years. Temporary relationship problems, temporary debt, temporary humiliation when relatives asked what I was doing with my degree. Then one day temporary quietly became my entire life. I lost the restaurant job last year after management changed. Not dramatically. Nobody yelled. They just cut hours until I barely existed there anymore. I remember standing in the walk-in freezer staring at boxes of frozen fries while my manager explained scheduling changes without making eye contact. I knew before he finished talking. After that I applied everywhere. Marketing assistant, social media coordinator, brand associate, receptionist, hotel desk clerk, retail, coffee shops, anything. Most days I woke up early and treated job hunting like a full-time job because everyone says that's what disciplined people do. I adjusted resumes, wrote cover letters, tried sounding enthusiastic for companies selling software I did not understand. Nothing happened. A few interviews, long silences, automated rejection emails arriving at 2 a.m. like little insults. I started getting embarrassed around people, especially old classmates. One guy from college posted photos from business class flights to Singapore while I was calculating whether I could afford eggs that week. Another bought a condo with his fiancée. Meanwhile, I was sleeping on a mattress without a bed frame because mine cracked and I kept putting off replacing it. I told myself social media was fake. I still checked it every night anyway. The business started almost accidentally. There was this outdoor market I used to visit because it made me feel less useless to be around people creating things with their hands. Pottery, vintage clothes, homemade soap. I met Nolan and Grace there. They were trying to build a small lifestyle brand together. Candles, home goods, little event pop-ups. Honestly, the first time they explained it to me, I thought it sounded shaky as hell, but they were excited in a way I missed feeling. I offered to help with branding and promotion. One thing became another. I invested money I probably should not have invested. Then suddenly I was spending every weekend hauling folding tables into muddy fields at 6 in the morning. For the first few months it almost felt romantic. Exhausting but romantic. We'd stop for gas station coffee before sunrise. Grace always forgot scissors. Nolan always lost the square reader. We'd laugh while setting up displays in freezing weather with numb hands. And sometimes people actually bought things. Sometimes there would be lines at the booth and strangers telling us our products made their homes feel cozy. Those moments fed me emotionally in a dangerous way. Just enough hope to keep going. But emotionally fed and financially stable are very different things. We still barely make enough to cover expenses. Some months I pay rent late. Some months I avoid checking my email because I know there's another overdue notice sitting there waiting for me. The worst part is how hard it becomes to explain your life after a while. At first people think entrepreneurship sounds exciting. Then enough time passes. Their faces change. My mother stopped asking direct questions, which somehow hurts more. She just says things like, "You're still doing the candle thing?" The candle thing. Last Thanksgiving my uncle asked if I was still between jobs. I laughed like it didn't bother me, but I drove home angry enough to punch the steering wheel. Mostly because part of me agreed with him. That's the humiliating thing nobody talks about. Sometimes shame turns into arrogance because it's easier. I'd sit there thinking they just didn't understand creative risk or non-traditional careers, but secretly I was jealous of people with normal paychecks and dental insurance. Jealousy makes you ugly inside. I became bitter in small ways. One night Nolan mentioned his girlfriend's parents offered to help with some inventory costs, and I smiled while something nasty twisted inside me. I hated how quickly resentment appeared in me lately. People would help him because he still seemed promising. I looked tired all the time now. I stopped dating almost entirely after 30. Not officially. I still downloaded apps sometimes late at night when loneliness got loud enough. But I couldn't stand the conversations anymore. What do you do? I never knew how to answer without feeling diminished. Business owner sounded pretentious considering I sometimes made less than a teenager working part-time at Target. Unemployed sounded pathetic. One woman I dated briefly asked if I had a 5-year plan. I remember stirring my drink and lying. People say confidence matters, but it is hard to fake confidence when your card declines buying groceries. A few months ago I ran into my ex-girlfriend Mia at a pharmacy. That shook me more than I expected. She looked calm. That's what I noticed first. Calm and rested. She wore scrubs because she's a nurse now. Her hair was shorter. She had laugh lines near her eyes I didn't remember. We stood awkwardly near cold medicine while fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. She asked how work was. I said, complicated. She nodded like she understood more than I wanted her to. Back when we dated, I used to talk nonstop about ambition, startups, creative freedom, building something meaningful. Mia used to listen while folding my laundry because I never folded anything correctly. I remember once she asked me quietly, "Do you actually want a meaningful life or do you just want people to admire you?" I got defensive immediately. Now that question follows me around sometimes. Because if I'm honest, part of my panic about being behind is practical. Bills, stability, the future. But another part is ego. I imagined myself becoming impressive by 30. Instead, I'm sharing storage units full of unsold inventory and eating peanut butter sandwiches at midnight after event days. And still there are moments I love. That's what confuses me. A few weeks ago we did a street fair during light rain. Hardly anyone came for hours. We were soaked and irritated and Nolan kept sneezing dramatically every 5 seconds. Around sunset an older woman stopped at our booth and picked up one of the candles quietly. Cedarwood and smoke. My favorite scent we ever made. She closed her eyes after smelling it. Then she said it reminded her of her husband who died last winter because he used to chop wood behind their house every fall. She started crying a little. Not dramatically, just softly. I didn't know what to do. Neither did she. She bought 3 candles and left. Afterward, none of us talked for a minute. The thing is, moments like that make me feel connected to life again in a way office applications never did. But then reality returns. Rent, insurance. The fact that I'm 30 and still texting friends things like, "Can I pay you back Friday?" Some nights I lie awake convinced I destroyed my future by refusing to quit sooner. Other nights I'm terrified of the opposite. Terrified that if I walk away now, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering whether I abandoned something too early because I panicked. I applied for jobs again recently. Quietly. Didn't tell Nolan or Grace at first because I felt guilty, like I was cheating on them somehow. Which is ridiculous. We are not soldiers in a war. We're 3 exhausted adults trying to survive. Still, guilt appeared anyway. I updated my resume and stared at the employment gap for almost an hour. Then I finally wrote the business into it. Founder, marketing lead, operations. It looked more legitimate typed out than it feels living inside it. Last week I had an interview for a marketing coordinator position at a furniture company. The interviewer was younger than me. That part bruised my ego immediately. She asked thoughtful questions though. Real questions. About branding, customer engagement, event strategy. Things I actually knew now beyond textbooks. At one point she said, "You've done more hands-on work than most applicants." I almost laughed. If only she knew I answered that interview while praying my landlord wouldn't call during it. Afterward I sat in my car gripping the steering wheel, overwhelmed by this strange grief. Because for the first time in over a year, I could suddenly picture another life again. Predictable paychecks, coworkers, routine. And instead of relief, I felt split open. Part of me wanted safety so badly I could taste it. Another part felt ashamed for wanting to leave the business behind after all the sacrifices. Humans are strange like that. We beg for rescue, then resent it when it arrives differently than we imagined. Last night Nolan and I stayed late packing orders. The warehouse heater was broken again, so we wore coats indoors. He was humming badly to old rock songs while taping boxes crooked. At some point he looked at me and said, "You okay lately?" I shrugged. He nodded slowly like he knew shrugging meant no. Then he said, "I know this whole thing is scary." That was it. No inspirational speech. No fake optimism. Just scary. And for some reason that helped more than advice usually does. When I got home, I noticed one of our candles burning unevenly on my kitchen counter. Wax spilling down one side because the wick was off-center. I almost threw it out automatically. Then I didn't. I just sat there watching it burn badly for a while.